Welcome to the BioSalsa podcast, where we host community conversations on the biomedical industry in San Antonio. This $44 billion industry is the largest in San Antonio, the seventh largest city in the U.S. This podcast is brought to you by Biomed SA, a member-driven nonprofit with the mission to accelerate the growth of the healthcare and bioscience sector in San Antonio and the surrounding region. I'm Heather Hansen, president of Biomed SA. We'll explain more about Biomed SA and how you can access the biomedical ecosystem in San Antonio at the end of the podcast.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for tuning in. My name is Dr. Derek Rodriguez. I am a research scientist at UT Health San Antonio, as well as the program manager for the Avanzando Caminos Hispanic Latino Cancer Survivorship Cohort Study, which is exactly what the topic of today's discussion is going to be. I'm joined by Dr. Amelie Ramirez, who is the director of UT Health San Antonio's Institute of Health Promotion Research, the associate director of cancer outreach and engagement at the Mays Cancer Center, and is the leader of the Avanzando Caminos study at UT Health San Antonio. Thank you for coming, Dr. Ramirez.
No, thank you so much, Dr. Rodriguez. It's a pleasure to be here this morning.
Thank you. Before we dive into Avanzando Caminos, can you tell us how it came to be and when did you realize it was impacting Latinos?
Well, I've been studying cancer in Latinos now for a number of years and working with different colleagues from across the U.S. One of our first studies focused on cancer prevention in Latinos in 6 sites, and San Antonio was the coordinating center. And so that lasted for 20 years, and each 5 years we started giving a different emphasis. So we started first in prevention. Then we said, okay, well, people are coming in for screening, but they were struggling to make sure they got their appointments that they needed for screenings within the clinics. So the next 5 years, we did another study that showed that by incorporating a patient navigator, we were able to get women to be treated in a better timely fashion and getting the treatments that they needed as well. And so all that began showing us that perhaps we needed to be doing more in-depth work. Then the next 5 years, we concentrated on specifically looking at breast and colon cancer and patient navigation work directly with our cancer survivors because they face some unique needs that were not being addressed. And so that has really led us to our study today. And I worked with a lot of individuals who were my co-investigators. So it's really been nice just to see how our own leaders have grown into their own fields, but moving us in this direction that we needed to look more at Latino cancer survivors.
Wonderful. No, thank you for sharing that. Can you explain to us what the overarching goal of the Avanzando Caminos study is?
We study on helping our cancer survivors, and it's to really look at the non-medical drivers of health that are impacting our Hispanic cancer survivors after they've gone through their initial diagnosis and treatment for cancer. And what we hope with this study is that we can really look at ways to improve their quality of life after receiving their cancer treatment. Things that had not been addressed, sometimes people complain that they have a foggy memory or they can't quite get back to the activities that they usually were doing prior to their cancer diagnosis and treatment. So we really want to help them as much as possible to better learn what are those concerns that they have and how can we work together to improve their quality of life.
So anyone who would like to be part of this mission, where can they go and find out more about the study?
Yeah, we really encourage people to go to the mayscancercenter.org/caminos, and there's a survey on that site that they can fill out that will give us preliminary information, and then we will have our research assistants call them back to see, if they're eligible to participate in the study.
Thank you. So many of the listeners would probably want to know, why is this study specifically focusing on Hispanic Latinos?
Well, number one reason for me is that Latinos are the largest minority population in the United States, and oftentimes we're not included in many studies. And so it was really important for me to find out what was causing cancer in our community, how could we reduce the risk for our community so that they can enjoy better health as they age. So what we're finding in our study is that our Latino population is being diagnosed at a later stage, and so therefore they have more advanced cancer that sometimes the treatment are not as effective. So with the data we'll be collecting for this study, we hope to design not only prevention studies, but also additional survivorship studies to address their needs.
Wonderful. No, so can you explain more as an individual who may say, what qualifies me as Hispanic Latino? What do I need to identify as in order to be a part of this study?
Part of it is really self-identity, but some people may not identify as such because of their biracial or cultural backgrounds. However, if you had a blood relative that identifies as Hispanic or Latino or have a Latin or similar Spanish lineage, you may be eligible to participate.
Wonderful. No, I agree. I think that's a very important topic for this study. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the study entails? I were a participant. What am I looking into as far as being a participant of the Avanzando Caminos study?
We do ask a lot of our participants, but we ask it in a way that hopefully is also informative to them and that we really want them to share their story with us. Yes, we have a set of questions that we must ask, but it really takes them through what their journey was like so that we can learn more about it. So it will include interpersonal visits. We'd like for them to come. We will need to draw blood, and then we need to do just some physical assessments of height, weight, and blood pressure. But most of all, it's pretty easy. Our research assistants are bilingual who fully understand our community, and we actually develop a very nice positive relationship with our participants, and we want to help them as much as possible. And for many of them, they're telling us that this is the first time that they've had an opportunity to share their journey about what they went through.
So you've mentioned before the University of Miami was in collaboration with UT Health San Antonio. The study is essentially being done in 2 locations. Can you explain the importance behind the study being provided at 2 locations?
Again, it really goes back to one of my initial studies that we did 20 years ago to look at the similarities and differences among different population groups. And so when I selected the regions across the U.S., it was really to reflect the diversity of Latinos throughout the United States. And so that's what we're trying to do with this particular study. We know in South Texas we have a rich culture predominantly dominant of Hispanics or of Mexican American descent, and Mexican Americans do make up the largest proportion of Latinos in the United States, but we also have a large and growing population from other Latin American countries, and the Miami area really kind of represents that diversity. So again, we really wanted to represent the richness of the Latino community by having these 2 different areas represented.
No, I completely agree. And as many individuals living in Texas, predominantly come from the Mexico region, I think it's very important to kind of allow them to provide a space for them to share more about their journey and as far as cancer goes. And I think it's very impactful work that is happening here.
And we know that San Antonio's Latino population is getting a little bit more diverse, mainly because a military site, and often individuals have come through San Antonio for training, and sometimes they come back for retirement. So in San Antonio, even though we're thinking the majority would be of Mexican American descent, we're very open to anybody who feels that they identify as Puerto Ricans, Cubans, or South Americans, or Central Americans. We welcome everybody into our study.
With regards to those who identify as Hispanic Latinos, are there any other regions that you are wanting to include in the study?
We really would like to include anybody who lives in South Texas. We have now found ways to do the interviews via telephone. We're finding new ways to make it easy to draw some of the blood samples if individuals cannot join us here in San Antonio. We've become very effective in doing calls over the phone and using Zoom, and has worked very effectively.
Very great work, Dr. Ramirez. Can you explain to the listeners, how can I, being a cancer survivor, participate in this study?
Sure. We are looking for any Hispanic or Latino who's over the age of 18 and who have completed their primary treatment for their specific cancers. And that includes breast cancer, colon cancer, liver cancer, kidney cancer, lung and prostate cancer, stomach or cervical cancer. And they must have been a cancer survivor within the last 10 years.
Can you remind listeners where they can learn more about the study again?
Sure, there's different ways. They can call us directly at 210-562-6514, or they can email us at caminos@uthscsa.edu. They can go to the Mays Cancer Center website and go to the mayscancercenter.org/caminos.
Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. This was really insightful and very impactful work that you are doing here. We will be sitting with a participant of the Avanzando Caminos study and discussing their survivorship journey and how it led them to join the study. So thank you so much again. Welcome back, everyone. We are joined by Linda Mota. She's a research scientist, a breast cancer survivor, and a member of the Avanzando Caminos research study. Thank you, Linda, for being here. How are you today?
Hi, good morning. I am very happy to be participating in this podcast.
Wonderful, wonderful. No, I'm glad you're here. I wanted to talk to you about the Avanzando Caminos study in general, but also what is it to be a part of a study as a participant, right? But before we get into that, I wanted to talk more about your background on your survivorship journey. Can you tell me a little bit about how you were diagnosed and what are certain aspects that attributed to your cancer journey?
So I was diagnosed in 2020 when we just moved from Mississippi to San Antonio. So I went for a checkup. I was fine. All my blood work was fine. But then one day in October, I kind of woke up. I don't know why, but I felt like a lump on the side. So I went to try to get it checked up. And when I went back and tried to see if I could get a primary care physician, it just takes a little bit longer because I had no doctors literally at that moment. And it took a while. At first, my insurance, they didn't want to pay for the ultrasound and all the additional testing. But then I went back to my gynecologist. He tested and he was very surprised how I did not feel this before. It is a very stressful, scary time, especially during a pandemic. And there was no vaccine at the time, so I had to do a lot of this by myself. But I'm very privileged because my sister knows how the system is, so I felt like that I already had a much more advantage because I had the names of specialists that she trusted. So then I started on my journey, a very long journey of about 2 years. I did chemotherapy, I had vasectomy, I had radiation, immunotherapy. So it took about 2.5 years to go through the whole treatment. The hardest part was the chemotherapy because that just destroyed me completely. It was very scary because my son, he was used to seeing me with full of energy, and then he saw his mom every day on the couch, just really, really tired, in a lot of pain. So it is a very painful journey, very scary, but I feel like I'm very fortunate and I have a lot of privilege compared to other people that there are in my position.
Honestly, I relate to what you're saying completely with you saying how you woke up. That same thing happened to me. So I'm also a survivor, and I woke up and I said, what is this? And I was 8 years old at the time. And so I told my mom and she was like, this doesn't look normal. And so we went and got checked. Long hours of hospitals, ER visits. No one knows what's going on until they finally diagnose you. And luckily we caught it early enough, but it was an embryonal form of a solid tumor. So they said you were born with it. And it didn't really fully develop until later. And so the chemotherapy, the radiation, it's tough. So I completely relate. So you mentioned a lot of different barriers and obstacles that you have to overcome, such as, co-pays and insurances. But what are some other experiences or any other hardships you faced during your cancer journey?
One of the hardest part is trying to live day by day basis, but I also keep in mind that, okay, I have to make sure that I need to go to see this specialist. It's an army of doctors that I was going to. And yes, the days that I had to get treatment every 3 weeks, they were super long. And because there was the pandemic going on, they were very short staffed. So I had to wait for hours. There was also, I had to make sure that I wasn't in contact with anybody. My son was doing online schooling because, again, I couldn't get sick. But when I look back, the hardest part, it was seeing that my son was seeing me this way, and it affected him a lot. I had to take him to therapy because he was struggling a lot with the thought of, I'm going to lose my mom. So I think for me, it was very difficult, my end of it, but I knew that I've already overcome so many things. I'm already a 40-year-old at that time, and I know that I can do it, but he was just 8 years old, 9 years old. So it's heartbreaking for a mom to see their kids struggle and that they're worried about you, because I was supposed to be worried about him, not the other way around.
completely agree. And you said this happened during the pandemic, so I can imagine millions of other individuals facing the same thing. And we're fortunate enough where we have that support, but many of our participants say, I haven't told my family, or I couldn't bear to tell my husband or my sister or my brother, and I dealt with this completely alone. We've had many different stories, so I think this is a testament to the support system that is a foundational basis and much needed in order to get through a cancer journey such as this. So Linda, you were diagnosed, you did treatment, and then you were in remission. You were cancer-free at that point. Can you tell me, how did you find yourself in the study, and were you hesitant to participate in the Avanzando Caminos study?
So I was going for checkups and I saw a bunch of flyers. And since I'm involved in research, every time that I try to see if I can participate in any kind of study, and even my son, if he can participate, especially because there's not enough data on certain kinds of populations. The data that we have is very limited, and I just want to make sure that we have a more diverse pool of data. So I was waiting for a checkup and I saw the flyer. I was like, oh, this is very interesting. So I tried to read if I met the requirements, and I did. So that's why I started participating, because at some point I've done recruitment and I know what it is to recruit, and I know how special whenever you find somebody that's going to help you out in your study, especially if you have a good purpose for that study.
That's awesome. I'm glad you were able to at least see the flyer. You know, we've gotten a different pool of individuals that say, hey, I saw your flyer, or I saw something about the study. I want to know more. So I'm glad, you were able to come across this as a way to not only better yourself and process your cancer story, but also to help a community as a whole. Tell me about your experience so far in the study. What were you expecting? Did you have different expectations?
Well, I knew that you were going to be asking a lot of questions, but sometimes it's just the way the questions are worded. You kind of have to sit back and think about timeline is very important, because they might ask you something and maybe right now it doesn't apply, but applied a while ago. So when I was going through the survey, they were asking, have you ever felt discriminated because of your race? So I feel very lucky that I got cancer in San Antonio, because I had a very different relationship with healthcare before we were living in Mississippi. So it was very different. So when I got it, one of the first things after I processed it, I was like, I'm happy that I didn't get cancer in Mississippi. And, there's certain questions that and they're very sensitive questions, but I'm glad that you do go into those questions, because it's very important and it pays a big impact on the perception of how we feel.
I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people say, this question is very sensitive, or it brings back certain trauma or memory involved with it too, which is completely understandable. And of course, we tell our participants, don't have to answer anything that you feel comfortable whatsoever. But I'm glad that at least it gets your gears moving inside your brain and like, okay, how did I process this then? And what are my options now? Because like you said, it could have been different, a completely different story had you been in Mississippi compared to San Antonio. So I'm glad that some of these questions kind of attribute to that insight. Can you tell me, what is the best part of being in the Avanzando Caminos study?
So the interviewers are really nice. They're really compassionate, empathic, can joke around with them. So it doesn't really feel like a questionnaire. And so I do appreciate that. I feel like, yes, some of the questions there you have to on a scale from 0 to 5, right? But they make it that it's very conversational and that they're feeling very empathic towards your story and appreciative that you're sharing that information with them. So I'm always really happy to talk to them. I enjoy hearing all the different aspects that they are considering that could affect the survivorship journey. Part of my journey was that I had to get genetic screening and came back as I don't have any of the genes that it's supposed to be off, and I don't have any family history of breast cancer. And when I got diagnosed, we were not expecting that at all. So I appreciate that the study covers a lot of it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it's something that most individuals also enjoy as well. A lot of individuals have also said it's a form of therapy for them, because for the longest time they weren't able to share their story, or this was the first time they ever shared their story. And so it's also a really good opportunity for those who aren't out and about as much because of transportation issues, or they see their family here and there. But this is part of it, is when they go see our research assistants who do the interviews and say, I enjoy talking to them. I enjoy an opportunity to share my story and to attribute this to science. So the study is a total of 5 years, but by the end of it, you become the best of friends with the research assistants. But I want to know, what do you hope to get out of the study?
Well, my biggest drive to be participating in this study is to help, either as a story that I was able to survive, and this is how I was able to survive, but also making sure that at least my research brain, it's asking, I need data points. So making sure that I am quantified and that I am a statistic and part of it, because it's important to represent and bring a diverse set of data to research. So I'm personally making sure that I am heard, that I'm a number, that I'm a statistic, that I'm represented for everybody else that is going to come after me.
Wonderful. I completely agree with this, and I hope anybody listening, if they're wondering, well, how's this going to benefit me? Or in the long run, what is it going to do for myself or for my family? I think this is a really good testament to think, not only is it going to help me or my family, but there's so many other aspects at the very end of the study that this can mold and better create opportunities in healthcare, better advocacy for patients, better handling of providers. How do you talk to somebody who's going through this? And we talk about other aspects in the study. We look at blood components. How does my genetics play a part in this, into creating more precise medication therapies for each individual? So Linda, if I were a participant who was on the fence, thinking about but not really sure about joining the study, what would you tell me or other survivors who are in the same position?
I think that it's very important to participate in studies, because you want to make sure that you're paving the way for the other people that are coming behind you. You have to make sure that you're creating opportunities for everybody. So if you're hesitant in participating, the research scientists are very compassionate. They're very kind whenever they're talking to you. And when they're asking the questions, it helps you process specific things that maybe you haven't thought about, or that you haven't had any time processing, because you're trying to survive. So there's a lot of components that it takes years to heal completely. So this study helps break up in different ways. So sometimes there was a couple of questions that they get very sensitive, and the first time that I answer them, I almost wanted to cry. But then by this third time, I'm like, oh, I think feeling better. So
It's working. The healing is working.
So, no, I mean, I would try to participate, because it's not only for you, it's for everybody.
No, I agree. And you said this earlier, but representation really matters. Individuals in our community aren't represented in clinical trials or research studies. And this being observation, we're not giving you a medication. We're not pumping you with drugs. This is more asking you, what is your experience like? And how has your journey molded you into the person you are today? And how can we heal from it? Well, thank you so much, Linda, for taking the time to come sit with us and talk about your personal journey. We hope more people will be encouraged to share their stories. And as a reminder to anyone listening, we are looking for Hispanic Latino cancer survivors age 18 or older who have completed primary cancer treatment for breast, colon, kidney, liver, lung, prostate, stomach, or cervical cancers within the past 10 years. Those interested in sharing their story through the study can inquire about volunteering by reaching out to a member of our study team by calling 210-562-6514 or emailing caminos@uthscsa.edu. You can also visit us online and fill out a short pre-screening survey at mayscancercenter.org/caminos. Thank you all for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you at your first appointment with us.
Biomed SA accomplishes its mission by supporting the companies and organizations already here, catalyzing actions for growth that benefit the entire community, and promoting the region and its assets. If you are seeking connections to resources or want to increase your company's visibility in this market, Biomed SA can help. To learn more about Biomed SA, the life sciences in the San Antonio region, or to access additional podcasts, visit biomedsa.org.